some preset questions for me.
All right.
So let's start with you, Tiago. So you are centered on well-being. You are an equitable facilitator and a regenerative designer. You are focused on education and weaving of communities and of projects. So I'll pass over to you. What else would you like to add to that? Is that a fair summary? Is there anything else that you want to throw in there?
I think in a way it's a fair summary. But I don't want to make it too philosophical, but I'm here because of many other people that sustain me, and and the networks and the communities that I also participated, such as 7 Generations Labs, Indigenous and Modern, Rede Meli, and many others. And so I just want to acknowledge these people also, and the indigenous wisdom keepers that also help guide me and help me also to to exercise my humanity and my being. So it's fair enough.
Thank you. Wonderful. Jamie Prow. So Jamie, you guide early stage startups. You're a regenerative enterprise designer, a circular economy mentor. You're a startup coach, and you're a systems change engineer. One of my favorite topics.
There we go.
So over to you, Jamie. What would you add? How would you
I feel like you should always get somebody else to write your bio. They always do a much better job than you. So thank you. That's good. Yeah, no, I'd say that's pretty fair to say. I grew up in Guernsey in the Channel Islands, in a small island. Had quite a unique upbringing, very nature-based. And then I moved to London for 10 years, helping startups grow in the circular economy space. And now I've kind of found my love back with my roots with this island life, and I've moved back to Guernsey, and I'm kind of finding my place in this journey and with nature. And I think the more that I've learned about how to apply this in a business context, it's also helped me do the inner work that I need to be able to think that way and be able to work in those new and kind of unique rhythms that I'm finding myself in. So I'm using my own kind of journey as an entrepreneur to help other people understand this exact same journey that I've gone on, and it might come from different places for them. But it's about, similar to, I like Tiago's use of the word weaving. It's weaving these experiences into your practices. So that's me. But I think I preferred your summary than mine.
The thing that I'm excited about to talk to you, one of the reasons I'm excited to talk to you both is because knowing you and having had conversations with you separately, I know that you both are not new to the environment, to sustainability, to nature. You both carry this very long-standing relationship with the earth, with people, with cultures, with indigenous peoples, and so on. So that's a bit of a backdrop, a backstory that I'm privileged to know, and so I just wanted to share that with people before we jump into the questions. So let's jump in. Let's get started. So the format. Welcome everybody who's just joined us. We've just done introductions, and we're just going to jump into some questions here. So the world today, we're facing lots of urgency and lots of dilemma. We've breached 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries. We are addicted to overconsumption. We're dependent on fossil fuels. This is the sort of the scene that we're setting here. So I'm going to start with you, Jamie. Given the world as it looks right now, what's next? What now and what next?
Wow, we're going to start with a little question, is it?
Huge.
So, what's next? I think that's definitely the place to start, because those are the big questions that we need to be asking ourselves, and also we have to be comfortable in asking them and answering them as well. What's next is to envision a world that is cheerful and happy. And what I mean by that is trying to take away all of the obstacles in our mindset. So as soon as we start to, I don't know, point fingers, blame, measure things too intensively, we kind of fall down maybe pitfalls that maybe have caused some of these problems in the first place. It's a kind of quite a linear way of thinking. What we need to be doing is we need to be thinking about things in depth, and we got to be thinking about how we live in this big thick soup that is life, and move away from maybe some of this more binary mentalities that we've kind of learned and developed over generations, but also appreciate what they've done for us and where we've come. So it's a journey. So first is probably accepting kind of where we are, but I think majority of us are kind of there now. I think this is a conversation that's less needed to be had maybe the last couple of years. We've kind of made ground with that acceptance. And now what I'd like to do is jump forwards to the exciting bit, which is, well, actually inside these new paradigms, which we're talking about in times, these new horizons, there's a lot of excitement and there's a lot of truth and like really deep inner truths. And for me, immersing myself in those is truly rewarding. And I want to kind of skip the bit of, right, well, let's try and measure everything. Let's get really overly scientific and mathematical about it all. And actually, let's just open our minds to a new way of processing. And I've spoken to you a bit about this before. I kind of see this new movement a little bit like how I see creativity in this sense, and that creativity is a way of operating, and you need to enter a state of flow to be at your most creative. And I kind of think that's what's next. What's next is us opening that capacity to think in this really regenerative way. I think there's a lot of things that we can do being more pragmatic in terms of actions we can take too. But before we can start doing that, we need to kind of have this new open-mindedness to what's to come.
Intriguing. Tiago, the same question to you. What's next?
So,
and you can come from a perspective of collectively or individually from the personnel. It's really your call.
thank you. So now it's exactly what I was thinking about it, like trying to understand better the question and to say that I don't see that way that we all are in the same planet. We are going through the same things. And I think, again, we are more relational beings than this solo entity that we tend to think that we are because of, the economical system that we live, capitalism, some ideologies of liberalism and so on. Many of us, I would say, especially in the West countries, have embodied that. I myself. But I think it's good to bring that back again, and bring that back that also many people are not in this consumption of the earth. There are nations and peoples, and now I'm talking about traditional peoples and indigenous people as well. They are living for a millennium in a different relationship with a different views, with different experiences as well, that I believe they can they already experience with those I work with they already experience this is what Jamie was a life that with joy, excitement, and in a good and right relationship with nature as well. So that's what I want to bring in that sense. I think next is also like, I see the next as also like ancestral and as also return, but not that we're gonna to return. And when you think about ancestral lines of or lineage or ancestrality, you think about also the future. So you think about next generations, you think about multi-generations. So it's not only about the past, but it's also about the future. So I think that we, it's, I like what Jamie brought about it, about not thinking so linear in that sense, that we are not going to jump for the next. I think we also needed to, not needed, but it might be more careful to slow down, because we are going through many crises right now. So we are, redefining what is to be a human being. Not everyone is seen as a human being. What is how we related to the people, how we related to the earth, how we, our rights or responsibilities in this society with others, with all the beings. So we are going through a phase that indeed, I think we needed to take a moment to reimagine, take a moment to listen, take a moment to be open to other ways of being, understanding, sensing the words. And I think this will allow us to, even if we fail, that we fail better, But I think we needed to take this, some people call it, a sacred pause, to be able to, looking at everything, but not looking into one thing, not looking to everything, but without picking, it's a kind of getting lost to find ourselves. I think that's what, but not everyone is going through that. So I think it's important to understand that there are a lot of exchange that we could have with other people that have other views that are, experience. It's so diverse, our world. And unfortunately, we have this sometimes this a dominant narrative that, is exposed also from I think a power dynamic that says, oh, we have this problem now. We have the climate change, and we have to find a solution for that. It's very pragmatic. It's very
right.
And this is also something to be careful and to be thoughtful to that. To take, I would say, small pauses. But yeah.
Thank you for that, Tiago. So what I'm hearing from you both is this acceptance that change, widespread wholesale change is needed, which leads us into the next question then, an equally broad question. So I'm going to ask you each the same thing. What are some of the methods, tools, and approaches that you are going to use or bring to your work to usher in this change? So let's start with you, if we can, Jamie.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, that first bit is important. That's why I'm also glad you asked that question, because typically with the work, it starts with that too. An element of trying to get people or business leaders to think as openly and as big as they can, and accept that there might be failures along the way. This is a journey, and that's exciting, and that's what play is all about, and that's the state that we need to be in. We need to be in this way of play and play together, and that's play with nature, obviously, as well. What I typically do is I get people to, it depends if I'm working with someone who has an established business or is starting a new business, because I actually think the approach is different. Typically, I work with people who are brand new, so they have maybe the beginnings of an idea or the very starts of a business, but it's not fully materialized yet. And that's where I like to help people, because I don't think that they will have laid in those kind of typical seeds of destruction as they get described. If that's the case, then I would say the main focus is on the mission. So what is defining the purpose of not just the business action, like what it takes, but actually what is the function of the business? So for example, if today's businesses are grounded in a we must grow paradigm, then how can we change that function? How can we say, well, what if that's the function of your competitor or the business as usual sense, what is the function of your business? And then once we understand that purpose, we can custom build a business model around being conducive to that purpose. So what I mean by that is, what I've seen in my experience working with startups is, you can have the best intentions in the whole world, but as soon as you start getting grounded in the current status quo, your best intentions are only as strong as your intentions. The landscape will start to change them. So if you have the best intentions to have a regenerative business or circular business, and then you start playing in the capitalist playground, capitalism's markets will dictate which way you go, and you will no longer be regenerative or circular. So what I would help people do is to help them then think about, well, what is their business as an ecosystem, the business model, the strategy that brings those things together. But you would also look into things like the governance. So I think this goes into maybe some of the areas that Tiago covers, but it's about looking at things like your boards. And actually, if we have a new function and a new purpose as a business, how do we make sure that the right stakeholders are at the table to keep this running forwards? And then there's another bit, which is I call leadership, people call ownership structures, is you're obviously going to have leaders inside the business that kind of keep the momentum going. But a lot of the times in these spaces, circular economy and regeneration particularly, people's missions or purposes are very long scale. So say, we'll arrive there in 300 years. How do you make sure that your business leadership is continuously still pursuing that same purpose and mission? So we look at different mechanisms and legal structures that mean you can pass the ownership through generations of the company to ensure that you're always on mission. So it's those little things. So I don't try and completely revolutionize what business and business models are, but I try and push people to be very creative to push the boundaries of governance, the ecosystem or networks, the mission, the vision, the value, anything to do with the financial flows and legal structures as well, because you might have the best intentions with the business, for example, but if it's not being financed in the right way, that again is not conducive to your mission. So it's just being a guide and a mentor who understands business to be able to look at, well, what are the things that you might be embedding in early days that then start to undo your good work further down the line. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Jamie. That's fascinating. So I just want to sneak in a question there. So, as you're mentoring these startups, these new businesses that are bringing alternative values to the capitalist system and building it into their governance and into their structure, they're kind of pioneering a new direction for business, aren't they? They're leading in a new direction. Is it hard? Will it be hard to exist in a system that otherwise plays by capitalist rules?
I think that depends.
Is survival going to be more precarious for them? Do you think?
I think it depends on your perspective and what you deem as success as a business. I think I definitely used to think that. But then what I realized was we were still doing too much of the old paradigm, thinking that we were doing 100% of the new. Actually, once you can shift what success means and what you're measuring, then you're playing completely in your own game. And you might be measured against another company and in that paradigm not look like you're doing that well, but actually in contrast you might be doing great. And I think there's an element of still learning to do there. And like for me, sometimes this is personal choices or values led more than anything.
Yeah.
But I think as we learn, we will move forwards as ecosystems that support each other. That's one thing that I'll add with what we're doing. Not one person that I work with as an individual. I'm building an ecosystem. So as one of my clients or one of the brands I work with learns something new in this space, it gets shared through our ecosystem. So as one learns, so does everybody else. So if I'm working with somebody on some novel legal structure, for example, that I would never have otherwise learned about or had to work in, and we've discovered something or a new partner or a new connection, that then gets shared across the ecosystem. So in that, the ecosystem survives and thrives, which builds resilience, not in the individual, but as a whole. So there's lots of different ways that you can look at it like that. And I'll be really quick with this. If I just add in like a personal antidote, which is I'll just use today, like I could have sat at my desk all day today, but instead, I spent an hour going for a swim in the sea. Now, in today's business paradigm, that would be a bad use of my time because I could have stayed working and billing for my labor, but instead I chose to go do something for myself, which I believe is something that fuels me and is integral to my work. And it's about finding this balance. So that's a good way of breaking it into simple terms of, for me, inside what I deem as success, it works and it's good business. And, I'm still going to be working tomorrow. I've not gone bankrupt. So it works. But then maybe the sacrifice is, well, I didn't make that much money, but am I content with myself? Yes. And I think that's the key part of challenging business as usual is there must be a level where we are content. And if we are in a space where we have to grow, that means we must always be hungry, which means we're always trying to fulfill something. But actually, it's okay to just be full. And I think that's where I'll end my bit.
Wonderful. Okay, so turning to you, Tiago, the same question. So just to remind you, the question is, what are some methods and approaches and techniques that you are using and bringing to the table with your work for this change that we've identified needs to happen or wants to happen?
Yes. I'm taking also with me, and what I'm learning through this journey is also something that I would say is just it is not just is weaving wisdom, you know. This is what I think this would translate what I'm just about to say now, but it is literally, for example, I'm working with some indigenous leaders, and also not with other people from more perspectives of technology to see how we can merge this different wisdoms, but also when it comes to communities, for example, you know, how we can wisdom is something that it's a knowledge that can also be applied in a practical way. So it's something that we can use it. But if you see in yours, this is a take of my, but take of many people as well. So if you want to do something different, we have to bring another approach to it. And from my perspective, from my also history as well, from my life experience, there are so many narratives, there are so many views, there are so many perspectives that are not included in this, you know, if you can imagine a basket, you know. And once we have more of this, we'll have more people seeing themselves being part of this basket, you know, this weaving, they're going to bring different eyes, different perspectives to the table. And this is also going to be very valuable to, you know, some of the solutions that we are thinking. Just to give you one example, there are a lot of many people working with reforestation in many areas, also here in Europe. But I was talking these days with Naui Flores, who is an indigenous leader in Peru, who is also doing reforestation. And he was sharing with me that now he's looking for partnerships, because the way he sees people doing reforestation is just planting trees to mitigate climate change. But the way some other cultures would plant trees, they will plant like a pathway of medicine plants, a pathway of food that will be like, it's a kind of, it's how we can integrate it, also the climate justice to this perspective of climate change that we have, you know, biodiverse, how we can address many things. So if you have all these different voices empowered, you know, in a place, I think we tend to give a bold and a more substantial response for whatever challenge we are getting it. So it's also building a capacity that will be like that I would describe like a life learning. You know, this is also a way that we approach life in that sense, how we interact with the system, how we interact with ourselves as well. So I'm bringing these perspectives also and trying to weave this to communities, but also can it be applied for organizations as well.
You know, that brings us perfectly into the next question, in which we'll open up to the attendees as well to join in. So that leads really nicely into the next bit. So it's about how we build tomorrow. So just painting the backdrop here. So we have in the West, we have a huge capitalist system, a huge machine that's predicated on the inequity of certain parts of humanity. So typically the global South. So the linear business as usual model of capitalism is predicated on the labor and the pain of the global South. If you want to oversimplify it, that's sort of the divide we're looking at. And that's a very invisible layer to the consumerism that's causing pollution and global warming. So I immediately go there when I think about equity, and when we build tomorrow, how do we build in equity? How do we fix these hidden layers that enable capitalism? So this is the backdrop that I'm drawing from. So putting this question to both of you, And I invite everyone here, the attendees, to come in and raise your hand if you want to chime in, make a comment or ask a question. So the question is, how do we build tomorrow with equity? So let's start with you, Tiago. Let's bring you in. How do we build tomorrow with equity? What are the things you're thinking about first and foremost?
Yeah, it's a profound question, right? Especially when I think about tomorrow, I think about yesterday in that sense. So, but yeah, it keeps popping up to my mind how we don't repeat the same, you know. And that's my own story. I come from Brazil, a country who never, you know, the people never had a chance to declare independence. The independence was given by a king who decided to break relationship with Portugal, and then it continues, you know, and then we had the Republic, and then we have, so it was never a moment where people come together to on the table to decide something, to have this belonging, you know. So I really think this, yeah, we need to ask deep questions, right? I think about ourselves as well, you know. Or my experience tells me that first our relationships with ourselves and the relationships with each other and what we think about ourselves was, again, as I told in the beginning, as a solo entity. This has a huge effect on how we treat others and how we treat the environment. And the Minister of Environment and Climate Change and Climate in Brazil also said something like, we somehow move it from having this right to be to have a right, or right now is we have to have something, and then we are, you know, and then we be. So that's the strange thing of the capitalism, you know, it's playing our lives. So I would say, you know, that we take careful now, and we take approach that are more inclusive. We take moments to really connect with ourselves, but also connect with people and the land, and not jump to conclusions so quickly, you know. I think we really are in a moment that because our interactions are happening all the time. If you think you're more relations, so whatever you do, we have effect on Earth. If I buy a Coca-Cola, or if I buy another drink, you know, there is a, you know, we are learning more about supply chains and how these things work, phone and everything. So I think to build to tomorrow, as you said, and how we're going to do that, I think we're going to do that in different ways. You know, it shouldn't be one way to do that. It shouldn't be one actor, one player saying how we're going to build. So if you think about the concept of nations, it's pretty new, you know, in the human history. Before, people were living in the different systems and in different, so how we can allow also a system that, you know, within diversity, where we have diversity, because diversity is also resilience, that's we can also, it can also unite us, you know, how we can have something in common. So it's not that easy to answer this question, but I think we're not going to answer this question the way we did it before, just having a strong state or having a strong plan or deciding, you know. This is something that's going to take some time. And yeah, so I think should be, not should be, but I think it's important to try a new ways to weave whatever tomorrow is, and tomorrow is now, you know, in that sense, what we do now.
Yeah.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, Tiago. It's a huge question, and there isn't a right and wrong. It's but I was hoping to tease out some ideas, and you dropped some really fantastic ideas there. So what I heard was a revisiting of the self, reviewing how we see ourselves and therefore how we relate and see other people, ideas of nationhood, maybe moving away from that idea of nationalism, because look where that gets us. So some key nuggets in there. So Jamie, the same question to you, and then we'll open up to the audience to chime in with your ideas and thoughts. So the same question to you, Jamie. How do we build tomorrow with equity?
I'm glad Tiago went first. It's a brilliant question, and actually, it's not one that I think gets asked very much, or at least not in the circles that I've been asked to talk in. And I think I had an answer, but I've been quite inspired by something Tiago was saying, and also my experience now. One of my clients I work with is a soil biologist, and I'm learning a lot about the soil biome and permaculture. And I can see how they all kind of come together, and I'm going to try my best on the cuff to kind of make this work. But your question to start with, I suppose, was grounded in capitalism, which was a good place to start. So capitalism's built on a model of self-interest, right? So the tomato soup analogy, if I want tomato soup and I go to the supermarket and I buy for tomato soup today, as long as everyone else also bought, or enough people bought tomato soup, it'll be in the supermarket tomorrow. And like that's meant to be very democratic, but it means that it puts my individual self-interest first, and then we keep as it progresses, we keep pushing ourselves more and more and more down this kind of self-interest model. Now, what I think I see the similarity is what we're talking about here is, okay, well, we need to stop thinking about what's our self-interest, but look at ourselves as, well, what's in the common interest, the common good. And then I suppose when we go back to Tiago's basket analogy, which I loved, by the way, I might be stealing that in the future. It's, well, how do we make sure that we get everyone in the basket? Because again, this is where I'm bringing in the soil education and the farming and regenerative farming. You know, the dream element, the thing that makes it work is biodiversity. That is where the resilience comes from. That's the strength. That's the truth. That's the balance that we talk about. Yes, it's complex and it's not easy for us to understand, but it's this deep web that makes things work. And without, you take some of the elements of that biome out, it doesn't function properly. And that's kind of what I see with your basket analogy. That's why I like it so much. But then the question is, well, what's the basket? What's the common ground that we all share? And then this is where I would have originally gone with the conversation, but I think it leads on nicely. But for me, and this is just my perspective, and I think it makes sense to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but the common ground that I think everybody shares is quite literally the ground. Like, we all share the planet, right? We all are part of nature. We are nature. Yeah. That is our common ground. And I think for us to all come together or all enter the basket, we need to all have common ground. And that is the only, if I'm going to say, oh, there's one person or one thing or one silo that I can agree to be part of, it would be that we're all nature. And then finding the common ground within that, which, might be different or difficult for everybody, but that's where the joy of diversity is. Now, this is the other bit that I wanted to mention was, if you look at farming, for example, in the capitalist lens, we love like a monocrop, right? We love all of one crop in a field. We deplete the soil, we use fertilizer, we grow it again, we keep going, maximum yield, maximum return, but we kill the biodiversity. And then the counter to that is, a poly version of that, where we've got lots of diversity, lots of permaculture, and it's really strong. My worry with this self-interest model that we've been going down is, the more we push it, the more that we lose our culture. And that's everybody. That's not, there's people that are going to be losing out more and more than others. But I think it's pushing everybody's culture away, because we are essentially monocropping our own culture, monoculture. And that's something that I think maybe we need to be more aware of. Like, I think we're seeing this a lot in biology, ecology, and farming, But actually, I think we need to take a look at ourselves and say, well, actually, is this a societal structure? Is this something that we're doing as a society too? So I think that's where I would start. I would start by looking at as monoculture, not just in the agricultural sense, but in a global sense. And I also liked your nods to looking at how we divide the world up, and actually, would that happen in nature? Probably not. And if nature's our common ground, then maybe that does make sense. I hadn't really thought about things in that way. I see lots of issues with maybe mass globalization as well. But yeah, it's interesting. You've opened up an area for me to continue pondering as well.
Wonderful. So let's bring in the audience. Let's open this up. So let's stay with this idea or this theme of building tomorrow with equity. I'd like to invite you all to bring your voice, ask questions, make comments, share ideas. Has anyone got anything they'd like to add? Jana, I'm looking at you.
I saw a hand by Marshall, but otherwise I have a question, of course, yes.
Oh, okay, wonderful. I didn't see any hands. Jeff, can you see hands?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, Jeff's the hand man. Jana, the floor is yours.
Okay, yeah, I thought, thank you very much. This was an interesting discussion, and I'm sorry I missed bits and pieces here and there due to a connection issue. But what I found very interesting is in this discussion of equity and discussion of building entities that might not be single person, but communities or other entities that work together. If you think about entities that would like to change and adapt and to be ready for the future, what could be an easy change in the way of work that is maybe easier to adapt by an established company, institution, or others similar like that, that would follow maybe some of the knowledge that you were sharing, both of you, of the maybe the indigenous cultures. And so what I see is that on the one hand side, now the indigenous cultures are mentioned again and again as actually very powerful and as being proven cultures of survival and of treating the earth very well in a way that it has been given over from generation to generations, and that other systems create monocultures, etc. So I just put this question out, whether you think there's an easy adaptable strategy that is adaptable by institutions that are maybe deeply rooted right now in the capitalistic system or in others, but that are basically, building a common ground. And I think a few items I understood that are important to you may be relating to that. You mentioned the equity and basically, a self-awareness of our role ourselves and being able to contribute to the general vision. So I don't know, there's so many ideas. I'm curious if my talking inspired you to say something else that, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jana.
Can I take this a bit? Okay. No, thank you for the question. It's something practical. Supposed to make wisdom practical. But there is actually a class that is running, it's going to run now from Lani San Moonwalker. So she's an indigenous wisdom keeper from the North America, and she's talking about this foundation that I was mentioned, but we can also take was one way of perceiving a foundation would be for this basket, that it's called the right to be, and it's actually from Tu Moonwalker, which is also a teacher. And then in this right to be, it's the concept that not everyone in this system that we live, or you put in an organization, has the right to be, has the right to grow, has a right to learn, as a right to become wise. And this is based on something historical that happened when the Constitution of US was being in the making of the constitutions. A council of 5 nations of indigenous people in North America, they were helping Benjamin Franklin with the Constitution, you know, in the background. And when the Constitution was done, this indigenous nations, this council was a confederacy. They were asking Benjamin Franklin for, okay, I think we don't agree. We are missing here the rights of women, the rights of children, the rights of people of color, and the rights of the other beings, right? So I think it's really a company could take, you know, I think these principles as a way, you know, so how we treat the people and we treat the earth, how we can allow. So you see many countries now taking, few countries, you have Colombia now taking the rights of nature. So you have some movements around the globe and of people realizing that there's some knowledge, there's some wisdom, there's something that we can learn, there's something that there's one thing. And there's another practical thing that many people around me says as well, that, you know, just think about generations, you know, like what we can do now, that whatever you do now will have an effect in the next 10 generations. So whatever you do, think about the effect in these generations that they're gonna come next. It's a very, you know, it looks very, but if there are systems as well as you can, or tools, I'm saying about these indigenous tools as well, that you can map every action that you take and the possible consequences that you take through generations. So you can imagine, you know, if you produce a product now, you can imagine where this product is going to end, what's going to be the consequence. So you can really track so many things. So there are many tools actually to be applied, and this is not new. But I think we also need to. It's important to have this will, you know, or build a certain awareness about it. There are solutions. There are some things that we can weave and we can bring together. But there are things. But I would like to hear also Janie and how he would address that, what he thinks about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll try and keep it succinct. So it obviously comes up because whilst I feel like I take the easy option, which is fine. I say, hey, look, I help people before they've built their business and before they've embedded a lot of this stuff to undo. So I'm making my life easy. But it doesn't mean that people don't ask me to come and talk. And I'm actually in conversations now with like a pretty global, massive company. And I'm just impressed that they're even open to having these conversations. And a couple of others, and some that are really tricky, like an oil and gas company, it was difficult to have the conversations. And the reason it's tricky is because I also think it's kind of unfair. Like, it's unfair for me to go in and kind of say, well, you know, through what I believe and the structures that I believe business will move forwards with and the new trends of where economics is going to go and our new worldview is changing, there isn't really a place as you stand in that new future. And I think that's like a really unfair thing for me to come in and state and claim. But at the same time, I kind of tell myself that that's also maybe the truth might be helpful in some scenarios, and also there's the reality that I might be wrong. So it's hard. And to be honest with you, I think trying, which just sounds as cliche as it is what you need to do. People that are in these big places, big organizations with a lot of history, a lot of things that have happened through time that they can't really undo because they've become foundational pillars of their business. They're going to still need to try if they're going to stay market relevant as things start to shift. And I refer to those as the seeds of destruction. It comes from a talk. I can't remember who the talk was, but they talk about how you know, everybody's business, always the seeds of their own destructions are already laid. It's just if you can spot them in time to kind of mitigate that happening in the future. But the issue that I see is growth for the sake of growth is a seed of destruction. And every business that's successful today is obviously got that embedded in it, because that's why they're successful. That's why they are brilliant businesses today, because inside today's paradigm, that's what they need to be. Now, if you can go to a business and convince them that they don't need to grow, that's the beginning, and show them mechanisms to help them, rather than look at growth, look at resilience. That's where I would start. And the way that I typically try and start with these conversations is say, we need to lock, like we need to do mission lock to your mission. Like we need to find a way to make sure that your business purpose and function has an existence in the future. Like it's something that's valuable in this new economy. So, you know, let's take an oil company. If we understand that we're transitioning away from that paradigm, then what can their function, what can their value, what can their skill set, what can their infrastructure give us in the future? And how can we align that with something that we truly need? So we look at use value versus exchange value. So rather than it being really good at generating profit and capital, we look at what could that business function, if there is something, be used to give value in the future. Maybe it's their expertise, maybe it's their technology, maybe it's the infrastructure, I don't know. And then what we'd say is, great, well, if we've identified what that is, and we identified that we can build that within the social sphere that we need it to be within, and within the planetary sphere that we need it to be in, then how can we lock that mission in place? So it looks at more things like, how can we embed this mission as part of the foundations of our business? So no matter how far we grow, or we get new owners, or we get new stakeholders or new investors, it cannot be changed and deviated. And I would focus now on that point. If you're going to do something, it's on how do you lock a new mission into the heart of your company, and then the transition will come with time. But once you've locked it in place, the business will have to move in those directions, and therefore you're giving yourself agency to actually achieve the goal. So that's where I would start, but I'd say it's a really, really difficult game with companies that have already got so much stake of skin in the current game.
Thank you.
Hopefully that was helpful.
Sorry. Thank you, Jamie. That was wonderful. So, sticking with this same topic. So actually we've got a couple of questions from the floor. We've got Meryl and we've got Quaid. Meryl, would you like to ask a question or make a comment? Would you like to unmute and chime in?
Are you talking about me? My name is Marshall. And my last name is
sorry, I can't see very well.
It's Mermel, but that's okay.
Nice to meet you,
I've been
Marshall.
called worse, believe me, in my time.
The floor is yours.
This is a very interesting conversation, and I commend you all on what you're doing. In our business, we actually are a circular business, and we create circularity at multiple levels, kind of like what Jamie is talking about. And we have a framework that we use, because it's our belief that if we don't have a framework, then it becomes chaos. And then you're into chaos theory, and then everything goes to hell in a handbasket, as we say. So basically, our framework is, we've adopted as a framework the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Under those 17 Sustainable Development Goals, there are 119 protocols. And in order to meet all of them, it takes a lot of effort. It takes investment, capital, and it takes, but most important, it takes the right combination of people that are on the same path and share the same value system. So the value system we have is somewhat capitalistic, unfortunately for the people in this group, but it seems to work for us. We use capitalistic methods. We borrow capital, which is called debt, which in Economics 101 is a basic structure. I guess it wouldn't work too well in a communist or socialist methodology of economics. But then again, I haven't seen too many communist or socialist economies that are successful. I also have seen ardent capitalism that is toxic. So our mission is to address that. And by using the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, which includes equality amongst men and women and of all people, and also it includes the eradication of poverty, is a very important goal. So how do you do that? Sounds very lofty, but how do you practically do that? So the way we've gone about it is we've gone about it by creating what we call joint ventures around the world. So we have joint ventures in Africa, joint ventures in Asia, joint ventures in the Middle East, joint ventures in North and South America, Central America, all around the globe. The only place we probably don't have a joint venture is in Antarctica. And because there's not really many people down there to do it with, but that doesn't mean we don't go down there. So what is our mission? Our mission is, I've told you the framework. The mission is climate restoration and climate repair. And what that does is that creates a circularity, because people as humans are like every animal on this planet. We eat, we defecate, we consume, we keep circulating that in our lives. And whether we like it or not, unless we're dead, and even then, when you're dead, you get buried and you get put in the ground and your body parts get consumed by the earth. It's kind of what Jamie was talking about. So basically, this concept of circularity is already with us. It's just a question of getting away from, as Jamie pointed out, I would say, the people who are stuck in a rut. And so our approach, again, is climate restoration, climate repair. How do we do that? We have both a organic and natural approach, but also a technological approach. So I'll give you an example, and I can get people, if they want to connect with me, I can send you this webinar that I presented in May on the Green Carbon webinar series that went viral, and it's called Circular Mining. Very practical position. Mines are very toxic. They use toxins to extract minerals out of the ground. They use a lot of labor. Some of that labor in many places is even slave labor, which we abhor. I'm sure everybody on this group does that, shares my feelings about that. So we've taken an approach to mining that's called circular mining, in which we apply technology, but also natural forces to create an opportunity so that mines are not polluting. They create good paying income and wages for people who work in them. And I don't mean minimum wage like in the United States. I'm talking about decent wages, even for the lowest level employee there. And that creates, and also a support in giving people the opportunity, their choice. Nothing is put, there's no gun put to anybody's head, their choice to get an education. So to give you an example, if we have people that have BAs in their degrees, but they want to go on and get a master's or a PhD, we fund it for all our teams. If they are PhDs and they want to go postgraduate things, we can do that. If they want to become teachers, we will honor that. The key here is not what they want to do or what they think they want to do. The question is it in alignment with circularity? So to give a classic concrete example of circular mining, as I said, mining is the confluence of three industries that pollute tremendously. When you do mining, you have construction. Construction is a polluting industry. When you have mining, you need transportation. And as we all know, most heavy equipment are diesel engines that are highly polluting. So what we do is we use the mining sector to bring solutions to the transportation and construction that make all three industries combined in that one location or set of locations circular. And the reason we can do that is because we have technology that allows us to do it. So there's technology that's been around 80 years. It's called pyrolysis. It's heating up in the absence of oxygen. It was used originally to create chemicals, the very chemicals that some of us abhor because it pollutes rivers, waters, you name it. So to give you one chemical that's definitely in all over the earth, and probably you're drinking it right now, whether you like it or not, is PFAS and PFOS. It's an 18-chain and 15-chain chemical that has been used for firefighting foam, for nonstick pans, for a whole host of products. And it was created by DuPont, one of those companies that Jamie's talking about, that their structure is this way, kind of like a oil and gas company. They can't get off of it because they've been doing the same thing for 200 years. So we take those things and we break them down. Everybody said up until now they're forever chemicals. Well, I got news for you. I've got good news. They're not forever. We found a way to dissipate them, break them down, bring them back into the environment so they're not harmful to people. And on the contrary, we create out of those products more products that further abate environmental impacts. So that's an example of doing that. And in addition to that, when we extract, we take, let's say, just so you know, for mining, there's a lot of waste. It uses a lot of water. It uses a lot of arsenic, which is carcinogenic. I'm sure none of us want to consume any of that, let alone the PFAS and the PFAS that's in all the water in the planet. There's also the fact that when you mine, you have tailings. Tailings are the residual elements that have those chemicals in them from the mining process that they can't extract, at least up until now. We can. We take the tailings and we break them down using a form of pyrolysis, which is this burning in the absence of oxygen at a very high temperature. And that in itself is done in a circular approach. And then what happens is you get back the arsenic in a powder form that can be reused again, but you do it in a way that it's not impinging upon the employees or the people that are on the ground there. The second thing is you can recover the water. So I'll give you an example. There's a mine in Nevada. It's a gold and silver mine. It's got about $12 billion of gold and silver in the ground. And we have technology that tells us where it is. So we're not just digging up the entire property, hoping we find the right stuff where it is. We use technology to determine where it is. We're specific. We go in and we use the tailings to recover and sell those chemicals back to the mining company, which reduces their costs, by the way, but also is circular in nature. And we also share in the profits of gold and silver that are in the tailings, which can be very valuable. Now, in Basic Economics 101, I'm not talking about necessarily capitalism, but Basic Economics 101, there are products that are elastic in price points and inelastic. So what do I mean by that? Elastic price is like the more pork bellies you sell or the more wheat you sell, the lower the unit price is of the product. But there are other products like gold and silver that are inelastic. So to give a classic example I think of today, gold sells for $1,950 a troy ounce. Troy ounce is a very small amount. $1,950 a troy ounce. That doesn't matter whether you buy 1 troy ounce or 1,000,000 troy ounces. That's the price point. That's an inelastic market. So what's happening here is when you share in that revenue with the mine owner, who is the brownfield, we call it the brownfield, we bring it and turn it into a greenfield. Now, how do you get that funded? There's only one way to do that, in our opinion, and that is create 50-50 joint ventures with the brownfield. So we incentivize them that they're not going to be cut out because people have told us, well, you have all this great technology. You should own 80%, 90% of the business. That's not our approach. Our approach is 50-50, share and share alike, but under our rules. Under our rules are the climate change, the climate bond rules of the EU climate bond, which is a taxonomy that says you turn a field 100% to a green field, and that's
Marshall, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'd like to also hear Jeff and the other sir there.
Well, let me just finish my thought.
Yeah,
and then,
please.
Then I'll get off.
Thank you.
So my point is there is a methodology that's happening now. It's happening in Africa. It's in creating a new level of soil biome, by the way, because we create a form of biochar, which is used in the soil, which is also used in mining, which is used in a lot of issues. And I would recommend that you get a book called Burn by Kathleen Draper and Albert Bates. And that book will tell you there are 100,000 forms of biochar, and that can create and turn a circular economy and create a circular economy. And at that, I'll leave it to you. I'm done. Thank you.
Marshall, that was fascinating. I definitely would love to see that link and to follow your work, watch that webinar, and maybe talk some more. So thank you for all of that. Okay, thank you, Tiago. Thank you for breaking in there. So there was someone else with a hand up that I think we should include. Can you just share your name with us, please? I'm not sure. You say logistic something or the other on your label there.
Yeah. Okay. My name is Qaid. Quaid. I believe it's been shown there below
Kaid.
my picture.
Nice to meet you,
Yes.
Kaid.
Okay. I believe I may be having a very short time now. I'll try to keep it halfway through.
Yeah.
Most of it has been covered already. But my approach and my thinking is on a very different, angle. Whatever has been discussed up till now has been, in a circular manner. On
We've lost you. You froze for.
parameters of all. Sorry.
I'm sorry, you froze for a second. I don't know whether you did for anyone else, but you're back. You came back quickly. Sorry.
Maybe if you turn off your camera, we can hear you better.
Okay, hold on, please. Maybe it's because of the Wi-Fi issue. I had to keep my room closed because my grandson was quite.
You just broke for a millisecond, so
now I believe it will be all right, hopefully. Yeah. But if it comes through, I'll put down my video. Okay, so where I was. Okay, now what I believe is that the basic issue here is emission, and probably it is only because of the carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrogen oxide and all these emissions that we are facing all the climate issues. Now, I'll try to concentrate on the basic issue of climate catastrophe, which is there because of the carbon emission. Number one. Number two,
I think we've lost you again there, Quaid.
To do with the. Okay, let me close down my video now. Hold on, please. Stop video. All right. Maybe you will find it easier now.
That seems better.
Yeah. Now, and the other issue is on sustainability. And sustainability issues are all because of the overconsumption of resources and all that has been related with the resources, which has been very, aptly been explained by Marshall here. Now, on the issues of environment and on the issues of emissions, we are talking about the emissions from the fossil fuels. And all the efforts that are being made are to replace fossil fuels by the renewable energies, whatever form of renewable energies there are. Now, this is the basic point. On the capitalistic point, on the question that Karen, that you had raised, was excellent question of how the capitalism is going to help in future. Honestly speaking, I think that it is more than the capitalism, it is the human nature which is infringing it, which is stopping us from changing our behaviors.
Yeah.
And capitalism is one kind of a behavior, right? Communism or socialism is another behavior. Socialism at present is doing an excellent job such in bringing in the renewable energies at a much faster rate than the capitalism. Because in the capitalism, it is the self-interest that comes into play. And that is stopping a lot of entrepreneurs from bringing in the new technologies. What I believe is that both can go in synergy with each other and both can develop. But this will only happen if there are new technologies that come into play. And when I say of new technologies, I mean new energy sources. We are not going to stop using energy. I mean, let us be very frank on that. West is not going to reduce consumption of energies. They will go on increasing them. West is going to use resources whether they are theirs or they are from third world countries or from the south. They will definitely use the resources as long as they maintain their own standard of living. All right. Now, the new technologies that we are talking about are the fusion energy. West America, maybe United States, is not so eagerly pursuing, all the technologies, all the laws, or all that is being happening around the world. I personally believe that they have in their mind that they will probably bring in the fusion energy in the next 5 to 10 years time, and that may change the entire paradigm, of the energy economy. Number one. Number two is the energy from microwave. Now, I cannot explain more on that issue right now, but China is very aggressively working on that, and USA is also very aggressively working on these technologies. If these two technologies are brought into practical use, then a lot of things on the ground are going to change. All right, this is on the point of where the capitalism will be helping it out, and this is how they will be able to come into play once they find that there are other renewable energy sources. They are cheaper than the fossil fuels, and then they will replace the fossil fuel. On the other hand, on the sustainability part.
Quaid, I'm sorry to interrupt you there in your flow. I just want to clarify, when you talk about fusion, are you talking about nuclear power?
No, I'm not talking about that. Is fission.
Okay.
That is called fission.
Yes. So you didn't say fission, you said fusion.
Fusion, where the hydrogen atoms, deuteriums, are fused together to.
We've lost you again, Quaid. Are you there? We don't hear you. I'm not sure whether you're still talking.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. So Quaid, I think perhaps given the time that it is now, if you could wrap up your final 2 or 3 main points in the next minute or minute and a half, and then we'll make a decision as to whether we skip breakout rooms or not. Given the size of the call, we could almost treat this as an extended breakout. Okay.
Basically, I have covered on the energy point.
Yes, back to you, Quaid, to finish up.
Basically, I have covered on the energy point.
Right.
Now, on the sustainability, I think I'll leave it for the time being. Hopefully, in the next session, if it is possible, then I'll talk about it.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you everyone for your contributions. This has been an interesting one. We've covered quite a lot of ground here. Jeff, we haven't heard from you. Do you want to throw anything? Do you want to throw your hat in the ring?
Yeah, we're near the probably end of time, but I just wrote in the chat in case there was no time. But on the sort of original question of how do we pursue equity in the global sense, really, I think a lot of the challenge that actually the 8 billion people face is that we're all divided into these different nations that have a lot of going on between them that is really above most people's more or less pay grade. And a lot of people, while some people are free to move around and look for where they want to be, many are not. I think probably, I don't know, I'm really number out of the air. I'm guessing it's in the maybe billion are actually really free to move around places, and the rest are not. And this creates a lot of bad incentives for people exploiting resources and people and this and that, as well as it creates weird motives for governments to more or less hold their own citizens hostage because they can serve their own interests. And I think if not that this is something you snap your fingers and you remove the borders, but actually in the end, the premise of the system self-correcting, you think, well, if the governments actually lost their people when they weren't leading well, this actually would be better than having, like I'm currently captive in the US, I can vote for two people. I can't choose who those people are. They may both be awful. Usually they are both awful. It's not really, it isn't really democratic because I don't actually have a choice of who my leader is. I'd like to say, hey, who should my leader be? Let me go over there wherever they are. They're my leader now. And if we actually let people really choose among all the options, I imagine maybe there'd be plenty of bad leaders, but no one would choose to follow them. And that would at least create an incentive for people really to authentically serve their community and long-term needs.
Yeah, I think Jeff, I just want to add one thing of that in your sharing, because you know, this thing about connecting to the land is not just words, you know. It's like literally, I mean, how much you can take, you know, how much you can take in from what is happening in your surroundings. We you know, when you think about nations, when you think about, it's so complex, and it's so difficult to keep up with everything, you know, not that you have to. So yeah, I also share this. I think and this creates also diversity in that sense, you know, and other possibilities people can share, and you know, it's more flexible. We have more flexible ways of governance, ways of being, or you know. So I think it's a very, and in my view, and the people that I work with, it is raising question of how much the governments will be able to keep up responding to citizens' needs in the coming decades, with, you know, a lack of resources, or you know, especially here also in the West or Europe. So yeah.
You know, your comments, Jeff and Tiago, make me think about citizens' assemblies and an alternative democracy to the one we have now, which is really no democracy at all, really. It's a rigged, closed system. So actually this leads on nicely, because in a future episode of Caring is Cool, end of January, mid-February, sometime like that, I've got two other panelists coming on to speak specifically about citizens' assembly. So that's almost a really nice lead in to the next episode. So I'll make sure that I ping you all personally for that one, because it'd be great to have you on and to have you speak into that as well. So on that note, I think we've reached the end of tonight's amazing, insightful, deep conversation. So thank you everyone for your contributions, and to our panelists, Tiago and Jamie, thank you for bringing your insights tonight.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, how can we get the recording of this?
I will be probably posting a video at some point in the next week. Basically, it's sometimes I cut out a few things, but mostly I'll probably have essentially all of it.
Yeah, I would like to have the video.
Yep.
Thank you, Jack.
Great. Yep, of course.
Wonderful. Well,
Thanks
thank you
for the
everyone.
meeting.
It's been
Thank you,
great.
everybody.
Great to have you with us. Thank you.
Thank
See
you.
you next time.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
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 Ciao.